Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. Coast to Coast, This Week in America. Mystical powers, cosmic adventure, universally dynamic forces. A certain gifted individual is granted all three. Meet Stuart Duffelmeyer, brilliant, kind-spirited, 100% human. Best describes him. Now, he's an NYU student whose classmates play a horrible prank on him, and his life spirals into utter agony. Fooling around with him was their ultimate mistake. Dewey is an author, screenwriter, short filmmaker, computer expert. Beginning at the high school level, he published several articles and short stories for local newspapers and magazines. The author of several books and has reissued a new edition of Stuart Duffelmeyer and The Master of Plagues. He currently resides in his hometown of Kansas City, Missouri. And Dewey Reynolds, author of Stuart Duffelmeyer and The Master of Plagues, with us on This Week in America. Dewey, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's good to be here. Thank you.
I love this world that you've created and this character, Stuart Duffelmeyer, and the Master of Plagues. Talk about the inspiration to write this. Where did this whole concept come from?
Well, it all began in 2010 when I was in New York City at a film festival. And I was riding the number 6 train coming back into Manhattan. And I saw a kid sitting on the subway, and he looked like a very intelligent, very studious, very hardworking type of guy. And he looked like he was someone who was very individualistic, someone who had connections with nature, who had connections with the universe, someone who was very religious. And he also looked at Jewish. And I came up with an idea. I said, he looked like he would make a great character for a story. And for some reason, on the plane ride back to Kansas City, the name Stuart Duffelmeyer just kept pounding in my head. And I just thought he would make a great character for a story. And then as time went on, the story began to unfold, and I saw it mapped out in my head. And I said, this is some guy who I could see where he's kind of like the nerdy, dorky type, and people see that they can take advantage of him, so they play a prank on him. And in the midst of all of this, they feel as though, okay, we can get away with this and there won't be no backlash, no repercussions. But they find out later on that this guy has supernatural cosmic powers, and he uses it to his advantage, and he also uses it for his good. So that's basically where I dreamed up this idea and where the concept really came from.
You know, that's fascinating. Is that the beauty of writing? It's not like you sat in a room and it's like, okay, I'm not leaving until I come up with this great character for the series that I would like to write. You're on the train, minding your own business in New York City. You look at this guy, and suddenly this whole concept for a character evolves in your mind.
Yes. And it just like it ran away with me. It was like a runaway train. And I mean, more ideas would develop in my mind as time went on. And basically I would be able to come up with an entire story built around this central character, who is Stuart Duffelmeyer, who is Jewish, who is from a wealthy family, who is highly educated, who is very kind-spirited, as you mentioned in the introduction, someone who cares about mankind, someone who cares about the downtrodden. And it's explained in the story, and it just covers a lot of different territory and a lot of different subject matters. So it's really a great story.
Dewey Reynolds, it is. Dewey Reynolds is our guest on the program, author of Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Master of Plagues. You'll find it wherever books are sold. I'll direct you to authorreputationpress.com, and that'll be the website we'll feature on our website. If you go to thisweekinamerica.us, it will take you directly there to get information on the book. What is so nice about this is it's a great story. You won't want to put it down, but there are other aspects of it that touch on various issues that we all deal with in life. Talk about your expectations. What do you hope readers get from reading the book, Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plague?
Well, what I'm hoping that my readers will walk away with, first of all, is something to think about, something that I can put something on their mind. I mean, I'm hoping that once they read the story, they will learn not only forgiveness, but they will learn that that as far as like, how can I put it? We've all been done wrong by someone.
Yes.
And I believe that we've all sought revenge against something. And that is pretty much the major premise of this story, that we've been bullied, we've been mistreated, we've been done wrong. So therefore, we don't necessarily want to commit horrific acts upon someone or atrocities on someone, but we learn that sometimes people have to be taught a lesson, and it's for their own good. And that's what Stuart Duffelmeyer does in the story. And I think my readers will learn the power of forgiveness. They will learn that, as far as like, when you come, when you trespass against someone, there could be, some type of payback or whatever, as we would say.
Yes.
But it'll make you a better person, and you'll learn that you can't cross everyone and get away with it.
Yeah, talking about the true consequences of revenge, one of the themes in the books, Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plague. Talk about, when I finish, it's like, I want more. I want more of this story. Are you working on a follow-up to this?
Yes, I believe that there are other stories. Matter of fact, I have written a sequel to Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plagues, but I believe it can branch out into a franchise, because I feel as though the main character, Stuart Duffelmeyer himself, has a lot more to do. He has a lot of life to live. He has a lot of things to acts to perform as a superhero, and as far as like someone who can be a voice for the downtrodden, for those who've thrown on the junk heap of life and everything. So I feel as though he has a lot more to do. So I believe a lot more stories or other books can come from this character.
If you would, describe in some detail the main character, Stuart, and the impact that he will have and is having on readers. And I say that because you've created this fascinating character here, and I don't want to jump over that and not give the full story to our listeners. Talk about Stuart. Talk about what makes Stuart click.
Well, okay, like I said, first of all, Stuart is from New York City. He's a native New Yorker. He grew up in a very wealthy section of Staten Island. He comes from a very, prosperous Jewish family whose mother and father were into real estate, but he's a very humble character. He's not, an egotistical person, or he's not someone who flaunts his wealth and his status. And he believes in treating his fellow man as though the way he wants to be treated. And he is someone who just lives a very simple life despite his status and his wealth and his education, because he goes on to receive a veterinary degree from New York University. And in the course of in school, that's when all these other fellow students decide to play this horrible prank on him. And he is just someone who pretty much can diversify himself. He can get along with all different types of people, all different type of cultures, educational backgrounds, etc. And basically, what the story is surrounded by, the microcosm of the story is such that his one of his main mentors is an individual by the name of Rabbi Erwin Wedemeyer. He was Stuart's rabbi at the Hebrew school when he was still alive. But this character, Rabbi Wedemeyer, he guides Stuart from the spiritual world. And before he dies, he gives Stuart this magical Hebrew talisman that, once this talisman is consecrated, it will give him powers over all the animals and the insects and the natural forces of the earth. And once Stuart empowers or consecrates this magical Hebrew talisman, every single animal, insect, natural force such as tornadoes, earthquakes, etc., and typhoons and hurricanes will obey him. And he basically uses that power that's been bestowed upon him for the good of mankind.
Yes.
For those that are thrown on the downtrodden of life. But he also seeks out his revenge against those who have crossed him and committed this horrific prank on him and everything. But overall, Stuart is a very well-rounded, multi-dimensional character, and he's a very likable character. And for that reason, that's why I believe that readers will fall in love with this character, because he is just someone he's a very relatable character. He's something that a lot of people can relate to and say, oh yeah, someone did something bad to me and I sure wanted to come after them and get my revenge. So I can very much relate to this character.
Well, I think Dewey's got your interest now in the book Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plagues. You'll find it at authorreputationpress.com. The other places as well. And if you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can link on directly to get information on Dewey's book. I mentioned the background. This is basically what started for you in high school. What was it about writing that really interested you in the first place?
Well, first of all, I've always been an avid reader, love to read. I'm a voracious reader. And of course, you know, I watched a lot of cinema, a lot of movies coming up, and I kind of immersed myself into that world of being creative, creating something out of nothing, having mentors people that I admire greatly, like the great Sidney Sheldon, may God rest his soul. A lot of other great authors, you know, that have come along throughout time and everything. And because of the fact that I love to read and I saw myself as a very creative person, I decided one day I think I would like to embark upon trying to become an author one day, because I always knew I had a very vivid imagination. I love to research. I love to read. I love to just study people. I'm a people watcher. I love to know what's going on around me at all times. So therefore, I felt as though the time would come when I would definitely pursue becoming an author. So that's why I just have a true love for literature and a true love for writing.
People watcher, so you're writing the train and giving people backstories in your mind as you're doing that. And boy, you hit a winner with that ride in New York City with Stuart Duffelmeyer. Let's talk about other interests. Are there other hobbies that you have?
Yes. Wow, what do I love to do? I love to roller skate. I love to cycle. I ride my bike a lot. That's good therapy for me. Like I said, I love to read. I love to travel. Matter of fact, went to Egypt around this time last year for my birthday, and was over there for 8 days, and kind of feel like I want to talk about my travels to Egypt, you know, my going to that ancient land and everything. So I kind of feel as though a book will come out of that. So yeah, traveling, roller skating, cycling, reading, those are pretty much my main hobbies.
You mentioned some of your favorite authors, those who've had an influence on you. Talk a little bit about present day literature as opposed to literature from earlier times. What are your thoughts on the two types?
Okay, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, looking back at present day literature, looking today at present day literature as opposed to literature from earlier times. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I feel as though great authors will always come along. We always, you know, are introduced to new authors on the scene. I mean, but for instance, like when I look at writers or authors like Sidney Sheldon, in my book, he was a Renaissance man. I mean, he wrote in so many different genres. He wrote for television, he wrote for Broadway, he wrote for the silver screen, he wrote novels and etc. So he was just an all-around, well-rounded Renaissance man when it came to literature. And then I look at some of the other great authors like James Patterson of nowadays, and who is a great writer, Stephen King, who is a great writer, Walter Mosley, who is a great writer. And there are those who bring something different to the table. So to answer your question, Rick, I believe that the writers of old, when you go back some years back, decades back or whatever, I kind of feel as though I feel as though a lot more dedicated to their craft. Now you have some in modern times that are dedicated to the craft, but I believe as though some of the literature that's put out there nowadays is kind of like a rush job. But I believe the authors of old, like the Sidney Sheldons and some of the other great ones from the early 1900s and etc., I believe that they were more patient and they really wanted to truly put the best product out there that they could.
Yeah, as a fan of some of the modern day writers you talk about, you're sometimes amazed that I just finished his last book and now there's another one out there. As a fan, I like that, but they are coming now at a faster clip that it appears. You know, it's interesting you mentioned the different genres. Your book, Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plagues, in the fantasy genre. Are there other genres that you want to write in?
Oh, absolutely. I like crime. I'm telling you, I'm a big aficionado of gangsters and organized crime and mafia and true crime and all that. So definitely, I definitely like to like kind of like dive into that genre as far as like crimes and thrillers and mystery and maybe even drama or whatever. So yeah, I mean there's definitely other genres that I would definitely love to explore.
You're a very talented writer. Talk about your goals, where
Thank
you
you.
would like to move next in writing endeavors. And you sort of touched on those there. You really did. I can't put you in a box, and you don't want to be in a box as a writer anyway, do you?
No, I do not. No, because there are now. Don't get me wrong, Rick. There are authors who their entire careers is centered around one genre. Like for instance, like some writers may write nothing but erotica. Some might write nothing but romance. Some might write nothing but thriller, and that's fine. But I mean, when you look at writers like Stephen King, I mean, he writes in many genres, and there's other writers that do the same thing. But there's so much going on in the world that we live in. So I could never see myself limiting myself to just one genre, whether it be fantasy or crime or thriller or drama or mystery or whatever. So I mean, I would love to explore other genres because I believe there's so much going on in the world and there's so much to talk about, so much to write about. So I would definitely love to explore other genres.
What are you working on now?
Well, actually, I'm working on a book that it's a story that deals with a classic confrontation between a U.S. president and a very powerful mafia boss that takes place in the middle 1970s, where the basis of this story that I'm working on now, I've been at it for like about 2.5 months now, but this story it's centered around basically about how a U.S. president has a vendetta against a mafia organized crime boss, and he has them deported and thrown out of the country and thrown into one of the worst jungles or one of the worst areas in the on the whole planet. And this mob boss illegally re-enters the United States, and he begins plotting the murder of this U.S. president. So I'm working on that story right now, which I think is really a great story.
Well, you have my attention, and hopefully we'll have to have you back when that's published and be able to talk about that. Right now, out there, available for everybody to enjoy, Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plagues. I'll direct you to authorreputationpress.com, available in other places as well. If you go to our website, you'll be able to link on directly to get information on this particular book. Dewey Reynolds, the author and our guest on the program. Dewey, I love the creation of Stuart, the world that you've created there. Excellent job with that. It's been a pleasure.
You, sir. I appreciate that.
Well, a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for sharing the story and your story.
Thank
And
you. It was
we'll
a
stay in
pleasure
touch
being
and
here.
do it again.
And I just wanted to say, Rick, to reach out to all my potential readers out there. Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plagues is a great story. It's a very dispensable read. I think you'll really enjoy reading it. You'll walk away with something. It'll give you something to think about. And it's something I believe that you might want to go back and reread again. So thank you for everyone. And thank you, Rick, for having me on your show. I appreciate it greatly.
It has been our pleasure. In reading reviews, you have people that will go back and read it again, that will take away messages. Besides an entertaining book, there are some powerful messages in the book as well. The book is Stuart Duffelmeyer and the Masters of Plagues. Dewey Reynolds is the author. The book available at authorreputationpress.com. Of course, information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we're back on today's program after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, Associate Producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, Segment Producer. Ben Watson, Webmaster. Otto Bechet, Director of Engineering and TV Production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, Executive Producer of This Week in America.